Today in the News Digest, mass evacuation in Russian city of Belgorod after massive response on Russian energy facilities. Zelenskyy explains why the measure is legit. Ukraine is going to open military export centers in Europe in order to enlarge own capacity of fighting off Russian war machine. Sanctions pressure on Russia. Ukraine is rolling out a fresh wave of restrictions that will soon be included in next upcoming European package. The General Staff of Ukraine revealed the results of recent strikes on the Kapustin Yar military testing range in Russia's Astrakhan region, a maintenance facility for IRBM, intermediate-range ballistic missiles, a technical support building, and a logistics warehouse has been successfully targeted. Also, Ukrainian Defense Forces targeted a Russian military logistics hub near the occupied town of Rozivka in the Zaporizhia region. And in the Donetsk region, a Russian drone command center was destroyed. In addition, based on the results of early strikes on the UAV warehouse in Rostov region of the Russian Federation, the destruction of 3 containers with FPV drones was confirmed. Nearly 6,000 of enemy's assault drones have been destroyed. In Russia, after a massive attack in the city of Belgorod, authorities have announced mass evacuation. Regional authorities reported that repair work at energy facilities failed to deliver the expected results, leaving the city on the brink of a complete heating shutdown. Due to the low temperatures, communal services were forced to drain water from the heating systems in almost 500 residential buildings. That stands for 100,000 residents of Belgorod who were left without water and heating on the weekend. A critical situation has developed in the entirety of the Belgorod region, prompting authorities to urgently evacuate residents to other parts of Russia. President Zelenskyy revealed why and how hard Ukraine strikes Russia's energy sector. He said during his visit to the Kyiv Aviation Institute, Ukraine does not need to choose between targeting Russian military sites or energy infrastructure, because Moscow generates revenue from energy sales to fund its war chest, which makes it a legit military target.
Ми не маємо обирати. Ми б'ємо по військовій цілі або по
We
енергетиці.
do not have to choose whether we strike a military target or an energy facility. He sells this energy, he sells oil. So is it an energy facility or is it a military target? Honestly, it's the same thing. He sells oil, takes the money, invests it in weapons, and with those weapons, he kills Ukrainians. What is a Ukrainian supposed to do? There are 2 ways. We either build weapons to strike their weapons, or we strike the source where their money is generated and multiplied. And that source is their energy sector. That is what is happening. All of this is a legitimate target for us.
Ukraine will open 10 weapon export centers in Europe, including in Baltic and Northern European countries, in 2026. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced on February 8. Zelenskyy also announced the upcoming production of Ukrainian drones in Germany.
We're launching exports. By 2026, there will be 10 export centers in Europe. These include the Baltic countries and the Nordic countries. 10 representative offices will be operating in 2026. In mid-February, we'll see our drones being produced in Germany. I'll receive the first drone. This is a production line that's operational. We have production lines in the UK. All of this is our Ukrainian technology.
Exporting defense technologies and opening weapons production lines in partner countries are part of a broader effort to internationalize Ukraine's arms production, as its drone production capacity outpaces its financing capabilities. The news follows Zelenskyy's instruction back in October 2025 for the Defense Ministry to launch the controlled export of Ukrainian weapons abroad, beginning in November 2025. The idea is Ukraine will only export military equipment that surpluses the domestic military demand and spend the profit on urgently needed weaponry. Ukraine's defense sector in general, and its drone industry in particular, has exploded in growth and technology since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. More than 200 drone companies have emerged, many producing cheap, adaptable unmanned aerial systems that have, without any exaggeration, reshaped modern warfare. New technologies in particular are nothing new in general today. This is exactly what any country walking in Ukraine's shoes would have needed when dealing with a larger enemy. And so, the formula is not a secret at all. The more modern, innovative, high-tech, and low-cost UAVs Ukraine manufactures, the more professional pilots it breeds, the more enemies' military equipment and human power will be destroyed. And this is exactly how you win wars.
The current war for Ukraine's independence has become a competition of technologies, and in this competition, the leading role belongs to unmanned systems. The winner is the one who gains and implements a technological advantage on the battlefield. We are on the right track. In January, the unmanned units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces reduced the Russian army by almost 29.7 thousand servicemen, while the enemy was able to recruit only 22,000 people in a month. Oleksandr Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on Telegram.
This is a deadly, simple, and pragmatic mathematics of war Ukraine is applying here to destroy more soldiers than Russia manages to put into service. This is the effectiveness of our Ukrainian armed forces. And this, if multiplied, will force Moscow to stop the war of aggression faster than any sanctions or international pressure will ever be able to. The absence of manpower. Ukraine has its own sanctions, and it is rolling out a fresh wave of it, targeting companies that supply critical components for Russian missiles and drones, as well as the Russian financial sector. President Zelenskyy stated the measures are designed to sever supply chains for weapons production and tighten restrictions on the crypto market, a tool Moscow frequently uses to bypass international sanctions. A portion of these new Ukrainian sanctions is expected to be incorporated into the European Union's upcoming 20th sanctions package. More about pressure on Russia in our story for you.
Economic pressure on Russia is increasingly affecting the Kremlin's ability to continue the war against Ukraine. As Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated, due to the worsening financial and economic situation, Putin faces a strategic choice: either pause the war or take an extremely unpopular step, announce a new wave of mobilization. Due to the budget deficit, authorities are forced to reduce payments to the military, and record losses at the front are leading to a reduction of resources on the front line. However, Putin does not want to announce mobilization.
Russians have less money now. We see that their central bank report shows a deficit of more than $80 billion in 2025. We record that this is in the reports, but in reality, the amount is more than $100 billion, because part of it was carried over to the next year. This is what I saw in our intelligence analysis, and this indicates that their real deficit for 2025 was more than $100 billion. Is this hard? Very. So I think they need a pause. I believe Putin is thinking about it. According to our estimates, the deficit in Russia will be even larger this year. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, president of Ukraine, at a meeting with media representatives.
An additional factor of pressure on Russia will be the EU's 20th sanctions package, primarily targeting the oil revenues and financial system of the aggressor country. The European Union intends to tighten restrictions on Russia's shadow fleet, regional banks, and crypto platforms, as well as introduce new sanctions on exports from the Federation, from metals and chemicals to high-tech equipment.
We consider sanctions as one of the means to put pressure on Russia to come to the negotiating table, as a means to create conditions for achieving peace in Ukraine. Thus, this is a tool to achieve the much-desired and long-awaited peace in Ukraine. That is why we are actively working on the 20th sanctions package. We said it should be ready soon. We will see when exactly the conditions for its adoption will be met. But I can confirm that serious work on this sanctions package has been carried out in recent days, and I think we can expect it quite soon.
It will become more difficult for Russia to acquire tankers for the shadow fleet. In addition, the EU will add bans on the provision of technical maintenance for LNG tankers and icebreakers to the list of restrictions. Only pressure can force the Kremlin to seriously begin negotiating peace, as European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is convinced.
The Kremlin is doubling down on war crimes, deliberately striking homes and civilian infrastructure. It is the behavior of a nation waging a war of attrition against an innocent civilian population. As important peace talks are underway in Abu Dhabi, we must be clear-eyed. Russia will only come to the table with genuine intent if it is pressured to do so. This is the only language Russia understands. That is why we are stepping up today. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, from a statement on the department's website.
The United Kingdom has stated it is considering the possibility of seizing tankers from Russia's shadow fleet. This could become a serious blow to Moscow's revenues, reports The Guardian.
There are also signs that Moscow is reacting to Western threats by re-registering Shadow Fleet tankers under the Russian flag to prevent seizure. The Marinera was one of 10 Shadow Fleet vessels in the Caribbean that had reflagged to Russia in December and January, part of a failed effort to break the U.S. oil blockade of Venezuela, from a publication by The Guardian.
The Kremlin has no hope left of restoring volumes of Russian energy carriers. Analysts state India is the second largest importer of Russian oil after China and has committed to completely phasing out purchases of fuel from the Federation, according to the text of the U.S. President's decree. Therefore, as of 7th February, Washington ceased collecting part of the duties on exports of Indian goods to the United States. This concerns part of the tariffs imposed by Trump on India in 2025. Together with the tax for Russian oil, the customs rate on exports from India to the USA amounted to 50%. Reducing the size of the remaining duties for India will be possible through a trade agreement. If it comes into force, the base tariff on Indian goods in the USA will be 18%. In return, New Delhi will reduce duties on American goods. Reported by Natalia Husak, Volodymyr Stenhilov, UATV News.
That's it for today's News Digest. Thank you for watching. If you found this update useful, hit like, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. It really helps us. Subscribe to stay informed, and see you in the next edition.